Biden and the State Department grant immunity to Mohammed Bin Salman, the man the American CIA says is responsible for killing Jamal Khashoggi. He was murdered some time ago, and the White House, the Biden White House in particular, has said that Khashoggi is going to be brought to justice. He's going to be held. The people who murdered him are going to be held to justice, that he is going to be avenged, that there will be justice for his death. And so we're going to go through this in detail. We've got the actual complaint that was filed by Khashoggi's wife that details the horrific scene, the day of his death. We've got reaction or prior clips from the Biden administration that articulate what their prior position was. We're going to take a look at the U.S. recommendation, because now they're granting immunity to the individual who was responsible for the murder, and we'll see what his fiance had to say about it. But let's grab some background on Jamal Khashoggi in case you're not familiar with the story. This happened some time ago, and you can see the photograph here from Jamal Khashoggi. This is the gentleman, photograph taken in 2018. And Wikipedia tells us that he was a dissident author. He was somebody who worked for the Washington Post. And he was assassinated when he went to the Saudi consulate back in 2018. Agents of allegedly the Crown Prince Mohammed Bin Salman were responsible for it. And they say that MBS, right, he's this very sort of powerful prince over there, is responsible for making the order. So individuals are obviously upset about this. Khashoggi fled Saudi Arabia in 2017, went into exile, went and started writing out against the administration for all sorts of human rights abuses, got Person of the Year in December for defending journalism, and he's been, deemed to be called the guardian of truth, right? And so this guy was assassinated, according to the American CIA. And what's very interesting here is that the Biden administration said that when they were getting into power, right, this is a Washington Post columnist, right? This is sort of somebody, when this happened, the entire media came crashing in, sort of around this and said, we have to demand justice finally. No more dealing with the Saudis. Stop this oil transaction. Stop selling a military deal, or stop interfacing with them. It's time to decouple. So we'll see what the Biden people had to say about it. But let's take a look at the actual complaint that was filed by his widow, because this is a pretty horrific thing that happened. And you can see this is the case of Hatis Cengiz and Democracy for the Arab World Now versus Mohammed bin Salman, right? This is the individual who is in the palace in Saudi Arabia, as you can see. Now they're asking for a jury trial. This is a 61-page document. It was filed back in 2020, October 2020, so just over 2 years ago. And it's naming a whole slew of different defendants. Everybody's sort of listed in here, all sorts of Saudi officials being responsible for the death of Khashoggi. So here's the complaint. We'll take a look at the highlights here before we take a look at what the Biden administration did. They say here that the plaintiffs, her name is Hatis Cengiz, she's the widow. She seeks judgment against the defendant, which is MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, for the murder of Khashoggi. On October 2, 2018, the Saudis, MBS, acting in conspiracy and with premeditation, they kidnapped, they bound, they drugged, they tortured, and they assassinated a U.S. resident and journalist, right? He's a U.S. resident, and he was working for the Washington Post. He was a democracy advocate. He arrived inside the Saudi consulate inside Istanbul, Turkey, and then he was dismembered. His wife, Cengiz, or his widow, she waited outside for him for more than 12 hours while it happened. His body and remains were never located nor returned. This brutal and brazen crime was the culmination of weeks of planning and conspiratorial actions taken by the Saudis. The ruthless torture and murder shocked the conscience of people throughout the world. The objective was clear. They wanted to stop him from speaking out and for democratic reform to stop that movement. The murder was carried out pursuant to the directive of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. The Saudis saw Mr. Khashoggi's action in the United States as an existential threat to their financial interests, and they committed this crime. The plan to permanently silence him by murdering him was put in motion no later than the summer of 2018, after MBS and other defendants and their co-conspirators discovered Khashoggi's plan to utilize Dawn as a platform to promote human rights. The defendants learned that after hacking his telephone, that he had created and headed Dawn, and they were very concerned about this, that it was going to bring all sorts of scrutiny on their administration. When Khashoggi approached the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. to acquire documents to confirm his civil marriage, defendants manufactured the opportunity to murder him. Okay? He approached the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. to acquire documents. Specifically, as part of the conspiracy to kill him, the Saudi embassy officials informed Khashoggi that the documents were not available at the embassy in Washington. So this guy comes to Washington. I need to get married. How do I do that? They say, oh, bummer. You're going to have to go to the consulate in Turkey. You can't do that here. If you want to get married, you've got to go back overseas and go get that done in Turkey. Okay. Thus, while Mr. Khashoggi was in the United States, members of the Saudi embassy, who were also in the United States, lured him to Turkey under a ruse that was the sole place he could get the documents. The fatal misdirection took place in the United States. It was part of an overall conspiracy intended to have a direct impact on his political activities. Defendants and their co-conspirators organized and orchestrated the murdering of this scheme, and so therefore they are suing him for damages. Okay, so this is a private individual. The widow, they were married at the time of his murder. They were seeking to civilly confirm it, so they were actually married. They were trying to get the government to recognize it. He went into the consult. The wife waited outside. She never saw him again. Mohammed Bin Salman, he's the defendant. He ordered the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. Numerous individuals directly involved in the torture and murder of Khashoggi were part of his inner circle. MBS is neither the head of the Saudi state nor the head of its government, right? He's a prince. Rather, he is the son of King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. And King Salman is the head of the state of the kingdom. And because he serves as the prime minister of Saudi Arabia, he's also head of the government. They name a bunch of other defendants, okay? Tons of other people. We're not going to go through all of them. But they're going to come up with some additional claims. They're going to say, you murdered this guy. And they give us a bunch of additional details, okay? But it's a pretty horrific scene. The guy goes in. He wants to confirm that he's married. They execute him. They dismember him. And his wife is waiting outside. So the wife files this complaint. And they want all these additional damages, punitive damages, compensatory damages. The lawyers sign off on this out of New York, all filed out of the court. And so you say to yourself, okay, well, that's great. Shoot, if your husband, if your spouse, if your significant other, something like this happened to them, you sort of kind of want the government to sort of say, can we do something about this? Can we file a claim? Can we make this right in any way, shape, or form? So they do that, right? They file this lawsuit. They're in the United States District Court out of the District of Columbia. They're in DC. So my gosh, hopefully they're going to get some remedy. Let's see what happens. As we go forward, we take a look and see what Joe Biden had said previously about this situation. Now that we know what the complaint looks like, this was from a debate where Joe Biden was arguing with Donald Trump and moderators about dealing with the Saudis and how to handle the Khashoggi murder.
The government is responsible for executing nonviolent offenders and for torture. President Trump has not punished senior Saudi leaders. Would you?
Yes,
you would.
And I said it at the time.
Okay,
Khashoggi was in fact murdered and dismembered, and I believe in the order of the Crown Prince. And I would make it very clear.
On the order of the Crown Prince. On the order of the Crown Prince. Oh, MBS did it. Oh.
Clear. We were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. There's very little social redeeming value in the present government in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And I would also, as pointed out, I would end the subsidies that we have, end the sale of material to the Saudis, who they're going in and murdering children and they're murdering innocent people. And so they have to be held accountable.
Okay. Biden says, we're going to hold them accountable. They did murder him and they did dismember his body. They're murdering kids over there. There's all sorts of human rights abuses that need to be addressed. Now, when Joe Biden said that, it didn't sort of fit well with this old fist bump that we all saw some time ago. The fist bump heard around the world when Joe Biden just walks up and gives the old little, hey, bro, what's going on here? After the big laundry list of complaints that he had towards the Saudis. We just see the old fist bump. Boom. How are you? How are you? How are you? Everything I said, forget about that. Love you guys. Good to see you. What's up, bro? So That's what was going on out of the new administration. Talk a big game in order to get all the lefty liberals at the Washington Post to write good stories about you. He's going to avenge one of us. Okay. And I do think that there should be repercussions for that. I don't like the idea that people who are on Team America, whether residents or citizens, are being dealt with other governments. You know, I don't like the Russians doing what they're doing to Brittany Griner. I don't like the Saudis doing what they did to Khashoggi. I don't like any, America will discipline our own, okay? We'll deal with our citizens ourselves. You don't get to discipline Brittany Griner. That's our responsibility. Same type of thing here. And Khashoggi was just a totally innocent person. He just goes over there, and the United States is being asked to help this woman get some recourse. And Joe Biden said that he was going to do it. So what happened? Let's see what the State Department had to say. State Department writes a letter making a very interesting suggestion. Exhibit A from the State Department being filed in federal court. It's a letter over to the Department of Justice from the Principal Assistant Attorney General. They're communicating about the complaint that we just read. Cengiz versus MBS Mohammed bin Salman. This letter comes November 17th out of Washington, D.C. It's a 2-page document from the United States Department of State, a political body which is run by Joe Biden. The same guy who just said they're going to hold MBS accountable. Let's see what it says. Dear Mr. Boynton, in the above referenced case, we have the judge who's presiding, Judge John D. Bates, has requested that the U.S. government file a statement of interest regarding any issue in this case, but in particular about whether this doctrine, called the Act of State Doctrine, applies, and the applicability of head of state immunity in this case, including whether the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia might have interests that are implicated without them participating. They say that the court granted the government's second request for additional time, setting a deadline of November 17th. They said, we really need some more time to think this one through. She files a lawsuit against MBS. The district court judge, John Bates, he's like, I'd love to help you, lady. I'm excited to help you on this. Let me check with the U.S. government and see what they have to say about this. Because, you're suing the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Like, they might have something to say over there at the State Department. Let us know. Okay, State Department, do you want to say anything on this before I issue a ruling? Because I'm about to tell this lady she gets $400 billion from the Saudis. You want to chime in? They say, we need more time once. Oh, we need more time again. And now we need more time again. And they're setting a deadline for November 17th. Guess what date this letter is? November 17th. Talk about government deadlines, huh? All right. They continue. They say the State Department recognizes, this is the Biden State Department, recognizes and allows the immunity of Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman as a sitting head of government of a foreign state. There it is. Granted immunity to MBS from Joe Biden under common law principles of immunity articulated by the executive branch in the exercise of its constitutional authority over foreign affairs and informed by customary international law. If you listen to that, you'll know I said nothing right there, essentially. Nothing specific anyways. This is big general legal fluff language. Under the common law, principles of immunity articulated by the executive branch and the exercise of its constitutional authority over foreign affairs. There's nothing in there. But it sounds good. And also informed by customary international law. What customs? What international law? Where? What specifically? They say Prime Minister bin Salman, as a head of government, is immune while in office from the jurisdiction of the United States District Court in this suit. So is he actually in office? Like, is he going to be unelected anytime soon? Is he going to be not in office anytime soon as the prince? Isn't that kind of like a lifetime thing? So I guess he's immune forever. In making this immunity determination, the Department of Justice takes no view on the merits of the present suit. And we reiterate our unequivocal condemnation of this heinous murder of Jamal Khashoggi. In the same letter that they're saying, you can't prosecute the guy who murdered him. We reiterate our unequivocal condemnation of this heinous murder of Jamal Khashoggi, but we're granting the murderer complete and total immunity forever. Accordingly, the Department of State requests that the Department of Justice submit a suggestion of immunity to the district court. Sincerely, Richard C. Visek, acting legal advisor. Man, I'm sure he did not want to sign this letter. He's like, are you serious? I have to sign it? Can Jake Sullivan sign it, please? No, God, no. No. He's like, no, get that out of my office. I'm not signing that. He says, send that over to Ned. Give it to Ned. He's the spokesperson. Ned's like, I'm not signing that crap either. Get that out of here. They go down to like third tier Richard. Poor Richard. Poor Richard's got to sign this. They're like, oh, here you go, Richard. Sign this document. You're signing it. So, okay. So that is from the U.S. State Department, a political body, right? They don't tell us how they classify him as immune from this. They say, well, it's just customary international law, and it's also something that is pursuant to our constitutional authority over foreign affairs. Okay. Well, there's all sorts of constitutional provisions that you can reference that give you direct power. I mean, we've got a lot of this stuff is articulated in the law. Would you like to reference any of it? No? Okay. So that's great. They send that letter. They draft it over as Exhibit A. That comes from the State Department. It goes over to the U.S. Department of Justice. These prosecutors then, they've got to go tell this poor lady, you're not getting any stinking recourse. Sorry. Prosecutors, or let's say civil lawyers for the U.S. government, respond to Khashoggi's widow, Hattis, and they tell her, guess what? We're suggesting immunity for Mohammed Bin Salman, the guy who murdered your husband. Sorry. 6-page document out of the D.C. Circuit Court. Here is what the government writes. They say, all right, Judge, on July 1st, the court, you entered an order inviting us, the U.S. at the State Department, to submit a statement of interest about any issue in this case involving Saudi Arabia and MBS, whether he's immune or not. They say that the Constitution assigns to the president the responsibility to represent the nation in its foreign relations, and they give us some constitutional provisions that do that. Here, they say the executive branch, after considering the relevant principles of customary international law and in the implementation of its foreign policies, they've determined that MBS possesses immunity from the suit while he holds that office. And they say that this determination is controlling and it's not subject to judicial review. So they're saying, sorry, Judge, he's immune whether you like it or not. You don't get to make a choice on this. They say the U.S. government has expressed grave concerns about Jamal Khashoggi's horrific killing and has raised these concerns publicly with the most senior levels of the Saudi government. It's also imposed financial sanctions and visa restrictions after the killing, and it's sought to promote transparency as well as get more information out to the public through an intelligence community assessment. However, the doctrine of head of state immunity is well established in customary international law, and it's been consistently longstanding, and we've been honoring it in the executive branch for a long time. And so pursuant to these principles, the Department of State has informed the DOJ that the State Department recognizes the immunity of MBS. Man, that's not what Biden said they were going to do. Under common law principles of immunity articulated by the executive branch, here they put that line again that means nothing. Under common law principles of immunity that's articulated in our minds, MBS, as a sitting head of government, is immune. In making this determination, the Department of State takes no view on the merits of the suit and reiterates its unequivocal condemnation. Now, for many years, they say that the executive branch exclusively determined the immunity. And so they say the court, you don't have any ability to change our position on this. And they bring in some Supreme Court case law as well. They tell us that the doctrine of head of state immunity is well-established customs in international law. Oh, we get some sources here, which is good. They turn us over to this guide on diplomatic practice. When was this written? In 1979. Yeah, okay, so somebody named Sato has a guide to diplomatic practice. So they just went on a Google or some search engine, and they just said, what? Diplomatic practice, how to shake hands when you go visit a murderer. Oh, this looks good. It says don't charge other people with crimes. Perfect. So they just go and they get some literal books, like they're referencing books. Somebody's guide to diplomatic practice. They have the schooner. Okay, we got a case here. We've got another case here. We've got 2 cases in a book, which is good. The executive branch accepts the principle of international law, and we grant him immunity because he's the foreign head of state. Therefore, he is entitled to this immunity. The court has no jurisdiction over this suit over him while he holds that office. Signed by U.S. lawyers James Powers out of the Civil Division Washington, D.C., counsel for the United States government. So absolutely, nothing they can do about this now. Sounds like the court is just going to, okay, Mohammed bin Salman, you are off this case, right? The other people who are, I guess, incidentally related to him or also immune. I would guess that immunity probably extends to his deputies and things. We'll see what the judge decides, but okay, so nothing there. Nice job there, United States government. Nice job there, President Biden, and your promises that you were going to have some sort of recourse. How does that land on the individual who lost her husband? How does she feel about this? She said, oh, yeah, Jamal died again today. That's what Hetis Sengiz posted on Twitter. Jamal died again today. Yeah, so not that good. Doesn't feel all of that good. Here's what else she said. She said Biden saved the murderer by granting immunity, and her case is being thrown out. He saved the criminal and got involved in the crime himself. Let's see who will save you in the hereafter. POTUS. Khashoggi's widow blaming President Biden for letting the murderer go free. Whew. Some heavy stuff there. So prayers to her family and to everybody involved in that as our government just, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, and, oil and all of that stuff, right? Don't say you're going to do something and then not do it. Don't say it. People were skewering Trump over it, but he didn't say that he was going to go after them, did he?